What happens when kindness becomes a cruel game of manipulation? Eric, a 28-year-old young man, lives on the streets of New York, facing the harsh reality of being homeless. Despite his situation, he is kind and supportive, always willing to help those around him. His dream is to one day find a home and have a stable life, far from the daily struggle for survival. The world around him is cold and hostile, where people look at him with contempt, and hope seems like a distant mirage. One morning, as Eric settled into a corner of the sidewalk, a young woman named Alice approached him, offering a snack and words of comfort. The light of hope she brought brightened Eric's cloudy day. But this innocent connection soon caught the attention of Vanessa, Alice's cruel stepmother. Vanessa, a cold-hearted woman, sees Alice's kindness as a weakness and decides to intervene. She has a sinister plan in mind, believing that forcing her stepdaughter to marry Eric would be a way to humiliate her and teach her a harsh lesson about life. When Vanessa presents her proposal, Eric hesitates, but the idea of using the money she offers to help his homeless friends convinces him to accept. Deep down, he believes he could change his situation and make a difference in the lives of others. As the story progresses, Eric begins to notice strange similarities between Vanessa and his own life. An unexpected encounter with an elderly man reveals a truth that will change everything. He is the son of Jonathan Barros, Vanessa's first husband, who mysteriously disappeared years ago. The weight of this revelation weighs heavily on Eric as he finds himself fighting not only against his condition but also against the ghosts of a past he never knew existed. Tension rises as the wedding day approaches, and Eric realizes that life can be more complex than it seems. He wonders if the love that began as a light of hope could turn into a trap. During the ceremony, Eric finally reveals his true identity, unmasking Vanessa in front of everyone. She, who had manipulated so much, now finds herself cornered, facing the consequences of her actions. The crowd watches in shock as the truth comes to light, and Vanessa is accused of fraud and manipulation. Eric, on the other hand, finds in Alice not only love but a partner in his mission to help those in need. Together, they marry in an intimate ceremony and decide to establish an organization dedicated to supporting the less fortunate. Eric and Alice turn their adversities into a story of love and redemption, converting the pain of the past into hope for others. Life, which seemed so cruel, reveals itself as an opportunity for growth and learning, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, kindness and love can prevail. Eric sat in his usual corner of the sidewalk, watching the hurried people pass by, each immersed in their own concerns. With a tired gaze, he reflected on the challenges he faced daily. Life on the streets was not just a physical struggle, it was a constant emotional battle. The kindness he offered to others was a way to protect himself, to prevent bitterness from consuming him. However, the kindness he cultivated was now a target. Vanessa, with her cold manipulation, had placed Eric in a vulnerable position, and the idea of a forced marriage left him uneasy. The truth about his origins, revealed by the old man he met, weighed on his heart. Eric was not only fighting against poverty but now also facing the uncertainty of his identity. He found himself questioning everything around him: his own choices, the kindness he valued so much, and what it truly meant to have a family. The revelation that he was the son of Jonathan Barros, Vanessa's missing husband, left him conflicted. He felt torn between the need to protect Alice and the urgency to unmask her stepmother. Alice, for her part, was at a crossroads. She admired Eric's kindness but also felt trapped between her love for him and her loyalty to her mother. Vanessa had always taught her to be cautious, to distrust others, especially people like Eric. Alice began to realize that her mother was not just protective but a manipulator who would not hesitate to sacrifice her daughter's happiness for her own pleasure. This discontent grew within her, testing her faith in the kindness that Eric represented. As the days passed, the wedding approached. Vanessa seemed increasingly determined to carry out her plan while simultaneously pressuring Alice to accept the situation. She frequently reminded her how cruel life could be and that marrying Eric would be a valuable lesson. Alice, on the other hand, knew that this was not true. The love she felt for Eric encouraged her to fight against her mother's oppression. On a cold night, as Eric warmed himself around a makeshift fire with other homeless people, he began to share his concerns with a close friend, Raoul. Raoul, an older man who also lived on the streets, was a wise soul who had seen many disasters and triumphs in life. He listened attentively as Eric spoke about Vanessa's proposal and his doubts about the marriage. Raoul, with his deep and insightful gaze, told Eric that often life tests the true strength of people. It is in the darkest moments that we find our light. These words resonated in Eric's mind, but he also felt the weight of responsibility. He wanted to help those around him, but he was questioning whether he was willing to sacrifice his own happiness for that cause. Meanwhile, Vanessa intensified her pressure on Alice, trying to convince her that Eric was a wrong choice, a burden she should not have to bear. The tension between mother and daughter escalated, with Alice feeling increasingly isolated. On the morning of the wedding, nervousness consumed Eric. He wondered if he was truly making the right choice by submitting to Vanessa's whims. He had a plan in mind. In the middle of the ceremony, he would reveal his true identity and unmask Alice's stepmother's manipulation. But the idea of exposing Vanessa left him apprehensive. He feared not only her reaction but also the uncertain future that lay ahead for him and Alice. Alice, for her part, was also conflicted. Looking at Eric, she saw not only the man she loved but also the possibility of a better life. Choosing to stand by him meant confronting her mother and everything she represented. What if Vanessa was right? What if Eric was not the solution she hoped for but just another problem? Emotions ran high as Eric and Alice finally met in a small corner of the ceremony. He could see the doubt on her face, but also determination. They needed each other to face what was to come. Life could be cruel, but together they could find a way to fight against the chains that bound them. What would happen next could change everything, not just for them, but also for those around them. Eric was in a whirlwind of emotions as he awaited the start of the ceremony. The weight of the decision he was about to make pressed down on his shoulders, making him feel more tired than ever. He looked around, trying to find a focus that wasn't the pressure Vanessa was imposing on him and Alice. The idea of revealing his true identity made him nervous, but it also filled him with a determination he didn't know he possessed. He wanted to be more than just a pawn on Vanessa's chessboard. He wanted to be the archetype of change, not only for himself but for Alice as well. Alice, in turn, felt a storm of feelings. She admired Eric's courage but feared what might happen if he let the truth slip. Vanessa had a way of manipulating situations, and the thought that her mother might retaliate was terrifying. Deep down, Alice wished her mother could be the protective figure she should have always been, but instead, she was becoming more of a threat to Alice and Eric's happiness. The love she felt for Eric was pure, but her mother's words echoed in her mind, causing her to hesitate. Meanwhile, Raoul observed the scene from a distance, sensing the growing tension. He knew that Eric's battle was not just against Vanessa but against his own insecurities. Raoul approached Eric, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Remember, my friend, courage is not the absence of fear but the ability to act despite it." The truth is a powerful weapon. Use it wisely. These words served as a reminder that true strength lay not in being invulnerable but in recognizing one's weaknesses and using them as fuel. The ceremony began, and Eric and Alice found themselves in a corner, away from prying eyes. Eric held her hands, seeking comfort. "I can't do this without you by my side," he said. Alice looked into his eyes, seeing not just doubt but the hope he carried. "If you reveal the truth, it could change everything," she replied, her voice trembling. "It's risky, but it might be the only way out." The connection between them was palpable, an invisible thread binding them together amidst the chaos. But the tension was just beginning. Vanessa, noticing the conversation between the two, approached with an enigmatic smile on her lips. "Eric, are you ready to join us? Life is full of choices, but some are easier than others." Her words were venomous, a disguised warning that only heightened Eric's unease. He felt time slipping away, and the pressure to conform grew with each passing moment. The wedding continued, and the atmosphere became more oppressive. Eric felt the guests' gazes, who had no understanding of the internal battle he was waging. He saw Alice, and her image began to blend with the idea of freedom. The truth he held inside could not only free him but also Alice. But the fear of the unknown paralyzed him. When it was time to make the vows, Eric felt it was now or never. He stood up, his voice steady but his heart racing. "I have something to say." The words echoed in the room, and all eyes turned to him. Silence engulfed the space, and Vanessa's expression changed into something Eric couldn't identify, but it was anything but good. "I'm not who you think I am. I am Eric, son of Jonathan Barros, and I cannot marry under these circumstances." The words erupted like a scream, an explosion of truth that many were not prepared to hear. The ensuing murmurs were almost deafening. Alice stood frozen, mouth slightly agape in surprise, while Raoul watched with a satisfied look. Vanessa, on the other hand, was in shock. Her expression quickly shifted from surprise to anger. "You can't do this. You don't know what you're putting at risk." Her voice was loud, and the tension in the room intensified. Eric felt the room could collapse around them, and the future he so desired seemed farther away than ever. Alice, finally regaining her composure, turned to Eric. "You did what you had to do. We can't live in a lie." Her support ignited a new hope in Eric, but the battle was far from over. Vanessa would not give up easily, and the fight for freedom and truth was only just beginning. Life on the streets had taught Eric that each day was a struggle, but now he was about to discover that the true battle was for his identity and for the love he believed he deserved. And as the conflict unfolded, he realized that facing his fears was the only way to find the light he so desperately sought. Eric's revelation reverberated through the room, and the tension that had been palpable transformed into a storm of unrestrained emotions. The guests, stunned, whispered among themselves, some with shocked expressions, others with a sneer. What had once been a festive event was now becoming a spectacle of drama and uncertainty. Eric felt the weight of all those gazes, as if a spotlight were illuminating his failures, his fears, and his hidden truths. Vanessa, Alice's mother, was furious. Her anger was almost visible, like a shadow spreading across the room. Eric could see the fury in her eyes, the way her fists clenched and how she struggled to maintain composure but failed miserably. "You have no idea what you're doing, Eric. You're putting everything at risk." Her voice sliced through the air, and each word felt like a blow. Alice, on the other hand, felt her heart race. Eric's act of courage inspired her, but it also terrified her. She had always known their relationship was surrounded by traps, but she never imagined her own mother would become one of the biggest challenges. "Eric, are you sure?" Doubt crept into her voice, but there was also a glimmer of hope. She wanted to believe that the truth would bring freedom, not just for Eric but for both of them. Raoul stayed at a distance, watching the scene unfold. He knew Eric's courage could be a turning point, but he also recognized the danger it represented. Vanessa had never been an easy figure to deal with. He remembered how Alice's mother always had a way of manipulating those around her. And now, Eric was at the center of it all. Raoul's desire to help mixed with fear of what this situation could unleash. Eric took a deep breath, trying to gather strength. What he had done was only the beginning, but now he faced a new reality, the possibility of losing everything. The wedding he so feared was transforming into a battlefield, and the only weapon he had was the truth. "I can't live a lie anymore," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "I deserve to be who I really am." The room was engulfed in tense silence, and each person present seemed to be waiting for the next declaration, for the next explosion. But what would happen next? Eric's future, which had once seemed promising, now left him in panic. He knew he had hurt Vanessa, and that could have dramatic consequences. What he didn't know was the extent of those consequences, and how they could affect not only him but everyone around him. Alice, with tears in her eyes, stepped forward. "Mother, we can't continue like this. Life isn't about following rules imposed on us. We must be free to be who we are." The look of determination on her face mirrored the internal struggle Eric was facing. It was a struggle for freedom, for truth, and for a love that seemed to be teetering on the edge of an abyss. Vanessa, realizing she had lost control of the situation, decided to attack. "You want freedom, Eric? Then be prepared for the consequences. What you did here will not go unpunished." Her words struck like an arrow, and Eric felt a chill run down his spine. He knew Vanessa had the power to ruin his life and Alice's, if she wanted to. The threat hung in the air, and the freedom he so desperately desired felt like a distant dream. As the tension grew, Eric began to reconsider his choices. He had freed himself from a prison he had built for himself, but now he saw that freedom did not come without pain. The struggle for his identity was far from over, and he would have to face his past failures. He remembered the moments he had let himself be swayed by others' expectations, when he had been afraid to assert himself. Now, the weight of those memories hit him hard. In that moment, Eric realized it was not just a matter of revealing himself. It was also about taking responsibility for his choices, for the impact they would have on the lives of everyone around him. He looked at Alice, who supported him unconditionally, and felt a wave of gratitude. But doubt still lingered. What if this revelation did not bring the freedom he hoped for? What if, instead, he was creating more problems? The ceremony, which was supposed to be a moment of celebration, was now becoming a turning point. The emotional tension was at its peak, and Eric knew that the next step could change everything. He had to decide whether to move forward, fighting for his truth, or to retreat, allowing fear and Vanessa's manipulation to control him once again. With this internal battle in mind, Eric prepared for what was to come. He knew he could not turn back, that the truth needed to be confronted, but the reality of his choices was beginning to reveal itself. And as the storm approached, he felt more determined than ever to fight not just for himself, but for everything that truly mattered. Eric's revelation echoed in the room, leaving a trail of uncertainty and unease. After his outburst, he felt the atmosphere around him change drastically. As the murmurs grew, he realized that the freedom he so desired could come at a very high price. Vanessa's gaze followed him like a burden, and the tension between them filled the space. The first impact of the revelation was the abrupt change in the party's atmosphere. The guests, who had been laughing and chatting moments before, were now splitting into groups, discussing what they had just witnessed. Some looks were supportive, but most seemed filled with judgment. Eric felt his legs weaken. He wondered if he had made a mistake, if revealing his truth had been the right decision. Doubt grew, but he tried to stay strong. Alice, sensing Eric's anguish, approached him. "You were brave, Eric. Don't forget that," she said, trying to convey strength. But even her supportive words could not erase the fear that had settled in Eric's heart. He looked into Alice's eyes and saw that she was also struggling against the waves of uncertainty. Her concern was palpable, and it only added to the pressure he felt. Vanessa, in a corner of the room, seemed to be regaining her composure. Eric knew she would not stay quiet for long. The anger she felt was a powerful force, and he feared it. When she finally began to approach, Eric felt a chill in his stomach. Her fury could manifest in various ways, and he did not know if he was prepared to face the consequences. "Do you really think this ends here, Eric?" Vanessa said, her voice sharp. "You can't just throw everything away and think there won't be repercussions. You're messing with all our lives." The way she spoke made it clear that the situation would not be easy. Eric was about to discover that the truth, while liberating, could also trigger a whirlwind of events. The room was filled with curious gazes, and everyone seemed to be waiting for the next move. Eric felt heat rise in his face. The pressure of being the center of attention made him anxious. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want to live my truth," he replied, trying to convey sincerity. But the insecurity in his voice was evident, and Vanessa did not seem willing to accept his words. After the confrontation, Eric decided he needed a moment to himself. He stepped away from the crowd, seeking a quieter corner. As he sat in an isolated chair, reality began to weigh on him even more. What he had done was not just a personal revelation, but a rupture in a relationship he already considered complicated. The idea of losing Vanessa's approval and, consequently, that of his friends began to terrify him. As he reflected, Eric remembered his childhood. He thought of all the moments he had hidden behind masks, fearing rejection. Now, the truth he had embraced was causing a division that could be irreparable. He did not want to be seen as the villain of the story, but he knew that everyone's perception of him was changing rapidly. Raoul, who had been watching the scene from a distance, decided to approach Eric. "You did what you had to do," he said, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "The truth is an important step, even if painful. But now you need to be prepared to deal with the consequences." Raoul's words were a reminder that Eric's fight was not over. It was only the beginning. "What if this ends everything?" Eric asked, his voice trembling. "What if losing Alice is the price I pay for being honest?" Doubt consumed him. Raoul looked into Eric's eyes, recognizing the intensity of his fear. "If Alice truly loves you, she will be by your side. You can't predict the future, but you need to be true to yourself." The conversation with Raoul brought a bit of clarity to Eric, but new obstacles still awaited him. How would he deal with Vanessa's disapproval? And what would happen if friends began to distance themselves? The idea of losing his support network terrified him, and he wondered if he would have enough strength to face the storm that was coming. With a heavy heart, Eric returned to rejoin the guests. He knew he needed to be prepared for the reactions that would come, but he also felt a new determination. The truth, as painful as it was the first step toward freedom. He took a deep breath, ready to face whatever life threw at him, even if the path ahead was filled with challenges. The fight for his identity was just beginning, and he refused to let fear carry him away again. Eric looked around the room, observing the familiar yet strange faces of his friends. The party, which had once been a space of joy and relaxation, was now becoming an emotional battlefield. He knew that the revelation he had made not only changed his life but also challenged everyone's perception of him. The pressure built up in his chest, a storm of emotions he could not ignore. As the murmured conversations echoed, Eric felt the need to reconnect with himself. He could not let fear define who he was. The conversation with Raoul had planted a seed of hope within him. He still had friends who believed in his courage. And above all, he began to realize that true strength did not come from pleasing others, but from being true to oneself. Determined to face his challenges, Eric decided to approach Vanessa. He knew he needed to confront the storm, and that if he wanted to move forward, he could not hide behind fear. As he approached, he saw her gaze, a mix of anger and pain. "Vanessa," he began, "I understand that you are upset. It was not my intention to hurt you or our friends. I just wanted to be honest about who I am." She crossed her arms, her eyes blazing. "Honesty? This feels more like betrayal. We're all here, and you decided to throw everything up in the air. How do you expect me to react?" Eric took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I don't expect you to understand right away. I just want you to know that this is part of me. I can't lie hidden anymore. I don't want you to feel that our friendship means nothing because it means a lot to me." He noticed that his words were beginning to penetrate the wall of anger Vanessa had built. Her expression softened a bit, and Eric caught a glimpse of the friendship they once had. This conversation wouldn't resolve everything, but it was a step toward reconciliation. Over time, Eric began to realize that each interaction, each conversation, was an opportunity for growth. He remembered his childhood when he faced the fear of rejection. Now, he was confronting that fear again, but in a different way. He was no longer the scared child. He was a man willing to fight for his truth. Every day, Eric made an effort to be more authentic. He reconnected with Alice, who became a source of support. Their conversations were now deeper and more meaningful. Alice not only supported him but also challenged his way of thinking. "You need to remember that acceptance comes from within," she said one day. "Other people's opinions don't define who you are." Those words resonated in his mind. He realized that for a long time, he had sought external approval, but now true wealth lay in self-acceptance. He began to practice this in his daily life, making small changes that reflected who he really was. As time passed, Eric also noticed that some friendships changed. Some people distanced themselves, unable to cope with the new reality. But others, like Raoul and Alice, became even closer. He learned that true friendship is based on understanding and mutual support, even in difficult times. There were days when insecurities still visited him, moments when he wondered if he had made the right decision. But with each challenge, he grew stronger. He began to see difficulties as learning opportunities, and that helped him transform. Instead of succumbing to fear, he allowed himself to grow. In a moment of reflection, Eric realized that his journey was not only about accepting his identity but also about accepting all aspects of his life. He had learned to cope with his flaws, rebuild his self-esteem, and understand that success was not measured by others' approval but by the peace he found in being who he truly was. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Eric was ready to face it. He had discovered a new understanding of himself and the world. Life was full of challenges, but now he knew he had the strength to overcome them. And more importantly, he was surrounded by friends who supported him, ready to walk by his side. Thus, Eric moved forward, not just as a man who had revealed his truth, but as someone who had learned to embrace his journey of growth and transformation. Eric was at a turning point. The party, which once felt like a moment of celebration, had now become an internal battlefield. He felt that all the voices around him were a mix of support and judgment, leaving him confused. The revelation he had made about his identity had triggered a wave of emotions, and he knew he needed to face what was to come. That night, as the music played and laughter echoed, Eric decided he could no longer hide. He needed to confront his greatest fear, rejection. After much reflection, he realized it wasn't just about his truth but about how he could maintain the friendships that mattered so much to him. He looked over at Raoul and Alice, who were talking in a corner, and felt a strong urge to approach them. With his heart racing, Eric walked over to them. Raoul, who had always been a loyal friend, stopped talking and looked at Eric with an expectant expression. "Eric, are you okay?" Raoul asked, concerned. Eric replied, taking a deep breath. "Actually, I'm here to talk about what happened. I want you to understand what I'm going through." Alice moved closer, her gaze soft and understanding. "We're listening, Eric. Go ahead." He began to express his feelings, sharing the fear that consumed him. "I don't want to lose you. I know that for some, my truth may be hard to accept, but I can't live a lie anymore. I want to be myself, and that means a lot to me." There was a palpable tension in the air. Eric could feel the weight of his words, as if each one was a stone thrown into a calm lake, creating ripples of uncertainty. He watched his friends' reactions, waiting for their response. Raoul was the first to speak. "Eric, I want you to know that I will always stand by your side. If you're happy being who you are, then that's what matters. True friendship is about supporting each other, no matter what happens." Raoul's words were like a relief. Eric smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude. But Vanessa's expression still lingered in his mind. He knew that true acceptance still needed to be earned. "And what about you, Vanessa?" He turned to her, who was still watching with a mix of pain and confusion. "I understand that this is difficult. I don't expect you to accept everything at once, but I would like the chance to explain what this means to me." Vanessa took a deep breath, her gaze softening a bit. "I just didn't know. I felt betrayed. But at the same time, I don't want to lose you as a friend." "I don't want to lose you either," Eric said sincerely. "I need you to know that this doesn't change who I am to you. Our memories, our laughter, all of that is still real for me. I'm just trying to be true." Silence fell for a moment, and all the noise of the party seemed distant. Eric felt he was at a threshold, at a point of breaking and rebuilding at the same time. It was a battle of emotions, but at the same time, it was an opportunity for transformation. Finally, Vanessa let out a heavy sigh. "I need time to process all of this, but I don't want you to feel alone. Maybe we can talk more about it?" Eric felt a wave of relief. The door was open for reconciliation, and that was all he desired. He would love to, thanking them for being willing to listen. The atmosphere around them began to change. Eric realized that even amidst the emotional chaos, there was room for love and understanding. He was not just facing rejection, he was also finding support in the people who truly cared for him. The party continued in the background, but for Eric, what truly mattered had shifted. He had faced his greatest challenge and, in doing so, not only strengthened his friendships but also grew stronger as a person. He understood that true courage was not just being who he really was, but also allowing others to be part of that journey. Looking into the eyes of his friends, Eric realized that acceptance was within reach. He had taken an important step, and he was ready to continue his journey, no longer as a divided man, but as someone who had the strength to be true, embracing not only his identity but also the relationships around him. Eric felt a lightness in his heart as the conversation flowed. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. The atmosphere around him, which had previously been filled with tension, was now beginning to warm with the heat of understanding. Raoul and Vanessa were there, ready to listen, and that gave him hope. In the days that followed the party, Eric realized that acceptance was not an instant event, but a process. He began to meet regularly with Raoul and Vanessa, and these conversations became moments of learning and growth. Eric spoke about his experiences, his struggles, but also about his dreams and aspirations. He remembered every shared laugh, every whispered secret, and realized those memories were still precious and relevant. Raoul, always the loyal friend, became his advocate. He spoke openly about the importance of respecting Eric's identity with their mutual friends. "If you really care about him, you must support him," Raoul would say firmly. This attitude helped create a safe space for Eric, where he felt comfortable being who he truly was. Vanessa, on her part, was on a different journey. The initial confusion began to dissipate. She found herself reflecting on her own beliefs and prejudices. In one of their conversations, she told Eric, "I realized that what I felt wasn't just about you. It was about the fear of losing the image I had of us, of our friendship. But I don't want that to separate us. I want to learn and understand more about you." These words touched Eric deeply. He knew that Vanessa's journey also required courage. She was willing to face her own fears to keep their friendship alive. With each meeting, he felt the bond between them growing stronger. As time passed, Eric began to open up more in his social life. He felt more confident presenting himself as he was, and that confidence was contagious. People around him started to notice the change. His authenticity inspired others to be true as well. Eric realized that the courage he found in revealing himself not only liberated him but also encouraged others to express themselves. One night, while walking with Raoul and Vanessa, Eric stopped to gaze at the starry sky. He felt a deep sense of gratitude. "You know, I couldn't have done this without you," he said in a moment of reflection. "You made everything so much easier." Raoul smiled and replied, "And you showed us what it means to be true. That's something we can all learn from you." Vanessa added, "Friendship is about accepting and growing together. And that's exactly what we're doing." Eric felt a wave of emotion. He understood that while there were challenges ahead, he was not alone. He had friends who supported him and a new sense of identity that made him stronger. Eric's life changed, but not just his. That small community of friends began to transform into a more welcoming space. Conversations about identity and acceptance became more common among them. Other friends started to open up about their own struggles, and a new support network formed. One day, while reflecting on this new phase of his life, Eric realized that what once seemed like a burden had become a source of strength. He was not just living his truth, he was helping others find theirs. He felt that the struggle he faced was not in vain, but an opportunity for growth and connection. Eric looked at his friends and saw that their journey was still ongoing. Everyone was learning to be more understanding, more open. And amidst all this, he found a new purpose: to be a voice for those who were still struggling to find themselves. He realized that acceptance is a continuous path, and he was ready to walk it alongside his friends, always seeking truth and beauty in the diversity of life. Eric observed the transformation not only in himself but also in his group of friends. The lightness he felt when sharing his feelings had become a pillar of strength in his life. He had learned that true freedom comes from acceptance, both of oneself and of others. Each sincere conversation with Raoul and Vanessa had cemented his confidence, allowing him to see that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness but a pathway to deeper connections. As the months went by, the small circle of friends expanded. Others began to join them, drawn by the atmosphere of warmth and understanding. Discussions about identity and acceptance started to echo in many voices, and Eric found himself in a supportive role for those still struggling as he once had. He became a reference point, someone who could offer words of encouragement and understanding. Those moments of exchange and learning became a safe space where everyone could be authentic. Eric reflected on his growth. Looking back, he realized that what once seemed like a solitary battle had transformed into a journey of personal overcoming. The weight of insecurity and fear had been replaced by a new understanding of himself. He had not only accepted his identity but had also become an advocate for diversity and inclusion. Each achievement, no matter how small, was celebrated not just by him but by everyone around him. Success, for Eric, was no longer measured by external standards but by the ability to be truly himself and to inspire others to do the same. The friendship he had with Raoul and Vanessa deepened even further. They became a chosen family, united by love and acceptance. Together, they faced challenges, celebrated victories, and learned to cherish every moment. The connection between them was a testament to the power that true friendship holds, capable of transforming lives and shaping perspectives. Eric knew that regardless of what the future held, he would always have the unwavering support of his friends. That night, while watching the stars shining in the sky, Eric felt a wave of gratitude for everything he had experienced. He understood that the journey of acceptance was ongoing and full of nuances, but the beauty lay in knowing he didn't have to walk alone. He had found a greater purpose, to be a voice for those who still couldn't express themselves. With that, Eric felt stronger and more secure than ever. As Eric's journey progressed, he remembered an important lesson. The wisdom gained through adversity is a gift that can illuminate the path for many. He then decided to share his story, not only to encourage others but to show that each of us has a unique light that deserves to be seen. Eric's story is a powerful reminder that acceptance and friendship have the power to transform lives. In the end, he realized that true happiness was not just about being accepted but about accepting others. He invited everyone to join him on this journey of love and understanding. If you also have a story to tell or have faced similar challenges, share your experiences in the comments. Let's create a space where everyone can feel safe to be who they truly are. Like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue bringing more inspiring stories. Your voice matters, and together we can make a difference.